Hello, here I am again in the name of the sovereign creator of heaven and earth, the Lord Jesus Christ. We're continuing with my exposition of my translation of Genesis. We come now to chapter 41, Joseph and Pharaoh. I'll read first verses 1 through 8. Now it came to pass, after 2 full years, that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he was standing by the river. And then 7 cows, well favored and fat fleshed, came up out of the river, and they fed in the meadow. And then 7 other cows came up out of the river after them, ugly and emaciated, and stood beside the first cows on the river's bank. Then the ugly and emaciated cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. Then he slept and dreamed again, and behold, 7 heads of grain, plump and healthy, grew up on one stalk, and then 7 thin heads, scorched by the east wind, grew up after them. And the 7 thin heads devoured the 7 plump and full heads. Then Pharaoh awoke, and indeed it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called all the magicians of Egypt and all his wise men, and Pharaoh told them his dreams. But there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. There's only one thing here. At the end of verse 1, some Bibles have the Nile, which of course was the river. That was the Nile River. Now I'll read verses 9 through 13. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I must now confess my neglect. Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, me and the chief baker. And we each had a dream the same night, he and I, and each dream having its own interpretation. And a young Hebrew man was there with us, a slave of the captain of the guard. And we told them to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. He interpreted to each man according to his dream. And it happened just as he interpreted to us. He restored me to my position, and him he hanged. I just want to comment on verse 9. I must now confess my neglect. Some translations have stronger words. But it was neglect, the neglect of having forgotten Joseph and his request. You remember that. That was what he was confessing. Now let's go on to verses 14 through 24. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph. And they brought him quickly out of the dungeon. He shaved, changed his clothes, and came in to Pharaoh. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. But I have heard it said about you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, Not I. God will give Pharaoh a propitious answer. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, In my dream I was standing on the bank of the river, and then 7 cows, well-favored and fat-fleshed, came up out of the water, and they fed in the meadow. And then 7 other cows came up after them. They were scrawny, very ugly and emaciated, such as I have never seen in all the land of Egypt. Then the ugly and emaciated cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. And after they had eaten them up, no one could tell that they had eaten them, for their appearance was just as ugly as at the beginning. Then I awoke. Then I dreamed again, and behold, 7 heads, plump and healthy, came up on one stalk. And then 7 heads, withered, thin, and scorched by the east wind, sprang up after them. And the thin heads devoured the 7 good heads. So I told the magicians, but there was no one who could interpret for me. This is all clear enough, and it's a repetition, but in verse 19, the Pharaoh gives his own interpretation that I've never seen in all the land of Egypt. That was just his own reaction. That wasn't part of the dream. Okay, now let's move on and read verses 25 through 36. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh had only one dream. God has told Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, the 7 good heads are 7 years. It is one dream. And the 7 thin, ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 thin heads scorched by the east wind are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh, God has told Pharaoh what he is about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout the land of Egypt. But after them will come 7 years of famine, and all that plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will consume the land. And the plenty in the land will not be remembered because of the famine that follows, for it will be very severe. And the dream was repeated twice to Pharaoh because God has determined this thing, and God will do it soon. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and let him set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do so, and let him appoint administrators over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 years of plenty. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are to come, and let them store up grain under Pharaoh's hand. Let them store it for food in the cities. Then that food will be as a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that will be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish through the famine. All of that was Joseph. Now, I want to comment on verse 35. He said, under Pharaoh's hand. In other words, Pharaoh's authority was to be respected and protected, and that was important. Pharaoh never felt threatened, evidently, by Joseph. Now then, the advice that Joseph gave was not part of the dreams, of course, but God obviously spoke through him. That was why God gave the dreams, all right? In the long run, God intended to preserve the lives of Jacob and his descendants, and it was in Goshen that they proliferated through the years. Okay, let's go on and read verses 37 through 46. Well, the advice pleased Pharaoh and his servants, and Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find anyone like this man in whom the Spirit of God is? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in respect to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am indeed setting you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and he clothed him with fine linen garments and put a gold chain around his neck. And he made him ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried out before him, bow the knee. So he set him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your word no one will lift hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah, and gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, as his wife. And Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. Just 2 things I want to comment on here. In verse 44, no one will lift hand or foot. I take it that was just an exaggerated way of saying that all the people in Egypt would be under Joseph's authority, a condition guaranteed by Pharaoh himself. But wow, what a difference. What a transformation from a prisoner in a dungeon to ruler of the country. And that happened just within a few minutes. Yeah. Now, verse 46 says that Joseph was 30 years old at that time. And I'm going to attempt an arbitrary calculation. I can't prove any of this. I was just trying to figure this out. I imagine that Joseph spent some 4 years in the prison. We know it was 2 years after the dreams, right? And that he spent some 3 years with Potiphar before being sent there. His promotion did not happen overnight. Okay, it took a while. In that event, he would have been 23 when he arrived in Egypt. Since he was born at the end of the 14 years that Jacob worked for his wives, he would have been about 7 when Jacob settled at Succoth. If Jacob stayed 13 years in Succoth, as I have argued elsewhere, Joseph was 20 when they entered Canaan. If Benjamin was born a year later, he would have been around 19 when he was taken to Egypt. Since the last time Joseph saw him, he was just a toddler, he would not have recognized him anymore. And we'll see that when we get there in a minute. That I just wanted to do that, but that's not part of the text. So right now let's go on and read verses 47 through 52. We're still in chapter 41. During the 7 years of plenty, the land produced abundantly. He gathered up all the food of the 7 years that were in the land of Egypt, and he stored it in the cities, putting in each city the food from its surrounding fields. That was smart, okay. So Joseph gathered a grain in great abundance like the sand of the sea until he stopped counting it because it was beyond counting. Before a year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. Quote, for God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house, end quote. He called the name of the second Ephraim, quote, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction, end quote. Precisely, Manasseh means forgetting, and Ephraim means fruitful. Now I'll read verses 53 through 57, and that'll end chapter 41. Then the 7 years of plenty that were in the land of Egypt ended, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. The famine was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph, whatever he tells you, do. So when the famine was severe throughout the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout the land of Egypt. And all the countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, for the famine was severe in all the lands. I just want to suggest that all the lands probably was referring to just the neighboring lands, not the whole wide world. In fact, we know there was severe in Canaan, which is adjacent. Now, let's go on. We're going to come now to Joseph and his brothers, which will occupy 42, etc. I will now read chapter 42, verses 1 through 6, the first half of verse 6. When Jacob heard that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why are you just looking at one another?" He said, "Indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy for us from there, so that we may live and not die." So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he said, "Lest he come to harm." So the sons of Israel went to buy grain among the others who went, because there was famine in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one selling to all the people of the land. Nothing to comment on there. So I'll just go right on the second half of verse 6 through verse 17. Then Joseph's brothers came and bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he acted as a stranger toward them and spoke harshly to them. He said to them, "Where do you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams he had dreamed about them, and he said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see where the land is unprotected." But they said to him, "No, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of the same man. We are honest. Your servants are not spies." But he said to them, "No, but you have come to see the unprotected land." Then they said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. Indeed, the youngest is with our father this day, and the other is no more." Then Joseph said to them, "It is just as I said to you, you are spies. This is how you will be tested. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you shall not leave here unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you to fetch your brother, and you will be kept in prison, that your words may be tested whether there is any truth in you. Or else, as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." And he put them all in prison for 3 days. Now, just one thing I want to comment on here. Here, Joseph starts to get even with his brothers, okay? You remember they'd mistreated him. And his dreams, they had bowed down all right. He starts to get even. Now let's go on. I'll just read now verses 18 through 28, and that'll be the end of this particular video. And of course, we'll have to keep on with the story. On the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, "I fear God. Do this and you will live. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be bound in your prison house, and you go carry grain for the famine in your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. So your words will be verified, and you will not die." And they did so. Then they said to one another, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he begged us, but we did not listen. Therefore this distress has come upon us." And Reuben answered them, saying, "Did I not tell you, do not sin against the boy? But you did not listen. So his blood is being required." They did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. So he went away from them and wept. Then he returned to them and spoke to them, And he took Simeon from among them and bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph commanded that their sacks be filled with grain, and that each man's money be returned to his sack, and that they be given food for the journey. And it was done for them. So they loaded their grain on their donkeys and departed from there. And one of them, when he opened his sack to give food to his donkey at the lodging place, he saw his money. There it was in the mouth of his sack. So he said to his brothers, "My money has been returned. Here it is in my sack." Then their hearts failed them, and they were terrified, saying to one another, "What is this that God has done to us?" A couple things here. Notice that verse 19 says, "Let one of you rather be bound in your prison house." That would have been the house where they had been in prison for the 3 days. Evidently, they had not been put in a nasty prison. They were put in a decent house of some sort. Now, in verse 21, the brothers reveal a detail that was not back when they put him in the pit and all that. At that time, he had begged. He had begged not to be sold, but they didn't listen. So now they're mentioning that. And now they say, "Therefore this distress has come upon us." It seems that they were marked by what they did to Joseph. Their conscience was troubled. They remembered all right. It all came back. Now, at the very end, they say, "What is this that God has done to us?" They attributed the situation to God. Well, everything had been certainly strange, all right, inexplicable by normal logic. Yeah, it just didn't make sense. So obviously God was behind, as in fact God was behind it all. We'll see more of that in the next video, God willing. Thanks for watching, and God bless.